Today we are trying Kinusaiga. I encourage you to look around and see what supplies you already have and follow along. Kinusaiga was created by Japanese artist Setsu Mayano. She creates beautiful landscape and architectural paintings out of scraps from silk kimonos. If you are a hobby collector like I am, you've probably seen this art form going around. You start with a piece of foam and you put some double-sided adhesive on it, and then you cut out a design, and then you peel off pieces of the cover, apply fabric, and then press it into the foam with a sharp implement. So I have really been wanting to try this. If there's anything that involves pretty fabric held together with adhesive, I am in. So let's give this a try. This isn't the typical foam that I see used, but it is something that I had on hand, so I thought I would give it a shot. I'm thinking that people don't use it, one, because it's pretty thick, and two, because it's messy. But I had these left over from a garage insulation project that I did, so I cut out a little corner there. I am going to be practicing on this one, and then I have another special project that I'm going to do in the Kinusaiga, and I bought a smaller piece of this foam. So this is the one that most people recommend using. It's thinner, it's denser, so it doesn't have the little bits of styrofoam that break off. So I'll be using that for the next one. And then on the adhesive, people often use the 3M. This stuff is a lot cheaper. This is actually stuff that I had. It was the Silhouette brand. So I've had it for, I'm pretty sure this came with my original Silhouette. So I've had it for like 14 years. And then fabric. So I saw a fellow crafter who was working on Kinusaiga, and she bought a rug from Five Below, and it's like $7, and it's called a chindi rug, and it's strips of fabric that are woven together to create the rug. And if you cut them apart, you end up with all these scraps. This is only like 2/3 of it. I still have more. Yes, you get a lot of scraps. I would not recommend doing this. I'll make another video about that. But if you have other scraps, these are from some other projects that I've done. So I will use these, but I wouldn't recommend buying one of those rugs for this project. So the other tools that I have, some scissors, an X-Acto or a craft blade. A lot of people use a seam ripper to press the fabric into the foam. I also have these. These are like dental tools from Harbor Freight. And this one looks like it might be really good because it's not sharp, but it is very fine, and it has a longer surface. It's also double-sided, so this side doesn't have a point. So it worked really well for pressing it in smoothly without tearing or cutting into the foam. I have also tried the stick glue on this one to see if that might work before I realized that I had this stuff here, because I didn't want to go and buy the double-sided adhesive. I try to start with what I have. This one is that's actually a repositionable stick, glue stick, and I did 2 coats, and it's a little tacky. This one was the Elmer's, the purple stuff, and it's not as tacky anymore. I think this would work if you were doing a small project and you put it on the same day you were using it, but I wasn't sure how long it would take me to finish this, so I'm just going to use the double-sided adhesive so I don't have to worry about it drying out. So for the design, I've seen that there are designs you can get online, Etsy. You can find different websites that have it on Pinterest. You can use coloring books. Stained glass patterns would work really well. This one, I like cactus, so I wanted to create one to try. If I can try to find a way to work the Silhouette or Silhouette Studio software into a craft project, I will. So I created this in Silhouette Studio, and I kind of went through a few different design trials here. Hopefully it works out, because I think this is going to be kind of small, but we'll see. It's just practice. So I drew the shapes and I placed them where I wanted, and you can kind of see how these are all different pieces. So I'm going to duplicate this and set it aside. And then this one here, I'm going to select it all again. When I created the design, I gave it a line thickness of like 1 or 1 1/4, so that I can see the lines and it looks a little bit more like a coloring book. And then I'm going to go ahead and change this to white. So now when I print it, I'll just have the black lines. So again, I'm going to select this and group it just so I don't lose the pieces. And this is on a 8.5 by 11 media size. So I'm going to move it up to the corner just so whenever it prints, I still have, you know, this part here that I can reuse for a different project. And then I'm going to save my design here just for color inspiration when I'm picking out my fabrics. So I'm going to group that together. Okay, so I left a little line here for the margins. Have my design. And then I have my piece of paper, so I'm going to go load this in my printer and print it out. So I have my printer set to letter size and plain paper. And then I want it to print on this white side. So I'm going to put this facing down because it's going to feed through the printer and come out with the white facing up. Okay, so make sure that's set. And then I'll pull out the catcher here. And that's yes. And then I'll go set up the software to print. Okay, so I have my design here open, and I'm going to go to File and Print. And I have my printer selected. Oops, I smeared it, but that's fine. So there it is printed out, and I'm going to let this dry a little bit. Usually my printer lets me choose the preferences, and I would have chosen the grayscale and less ink, but it gave me quite a bit here. So now I can just trim around this. And then I'm going to peel the backing off. Make sure that so now the adhesive is on that. I want to make sure that the adhesive stays with the white side. There we go. So you can see the adhesive is the dull side here and it's sticky. So make sure that stays on there. And then I'm just going to place this on here. And then ultimately it doesn't matter because I can just cover it with fabric. Okay, and then press in place. If you have a brayer, these are really good for applying things with adhesive on them. And then just give it a little test here. Yep, that is stuck on there really well. Okay, so now just take the X-Acto and I'm going to cut on each of the lines. If there's a line that I didn't particularly care for, I can now make any changes that I want. I could draw on more lines if I want. I can remove some, like if I don't want this tiny piece here, I just don't have to cut in there. Or even if I did cut it, whenever I put the fabric on, I could just put fabric over this little spot. So it's pretty flexible. So I'm gonna start, I guess just and you don't need to go too deep, but you do want to go perpendicular. so I have that cactus there cut out. Alright, and I'll just keep working around all the lines. I have all the lines cut out. I think I'm just going to double check here. Just going to make sure I can always go back and cut again if I need to. And then now I can pick out my fabrics and start adhering them to my foam. So I'm going to start with the flower here. I might regret this, but I'm going to start small. So I'm going to start in the very center. I want this lighter satiny fabric. And then this part here, this is darker. I'm going to use this scrap here. And then for the petals of the flower, I'm going to use this satin fabric here. All right, so I'm going to take off the paper cover, make sure that the adhesive stays on there. And I'm just going to use this as a guide so that I know how big my fabric I want to cut out. And I don't want to use this part here because it's kind of shredded a little bit. So I'm going to cut this down. Use some really sharp scissors. And you want the size of your paper plus more because you want to be able to tuck it in there. The adhesive will hold it on a little bit, but the tucking it in holds it as well. So I'm just going to trim off some of this excess here. And then place that. And then I'm going to use this tool and just work around the fabric. And because this isn't a very tight woven fabric, I want to make sure that it's not fraying around the edge as I'm tucking it in. And when I press the next color in, it will also help push this one in some more. Okay, that's good for now. If I needed to, if I had any large pieces, I could cut it off and then press this in here some more. Okay, so next we're going to do these 4 pieces here with this. And this was part of a placemat that I made. So I'm just going to cut this apart so I can use these little scraps. So press it in place on the adhesive there, and then start working it into the seam. That part probably has a little too much, so I'm just going to snip that off. Then we'll try the next one. I'm going to make a few relief cuts right here just to help it curve into place. And there's two, and then I have two more here. Next, we're going to move on to these outer flower petals here using this fabric. So again, I'll just peel some off. A pair of really sharp tweezers is also helpful. So making sure that the adhesive stays on there. Okay, I just cut a piece of the fabric off. If you're using a fabric that has the grain is visible, make sure to work that into your design. I want the grain to be going this way with the flower petals here. And just press it in place so you can see where the outline is here. You can almost use your fingernail to kind of get it started. So there's one piece, and we'll just keep working around. So this little petal here has 3 lobes. I'm going to cut this one here down just so I'm not fighting this curve. So I'm going to cut that right there. And then I'm going to be sure to cut that right there. Okay. And I'm going to cover this up again. Okay, so still working with the grain of the fabric going this way. Ooh, yeah, I guess fingernails work really well. So there is the flower. So next I'll work on the 3 parts of the cactus here. And then I might work my way over with the background or do this cactus. I'm not quite sure yet, but for sure these 3 next. I'm going to pick the rest of my colors just to make sure everything looks good before I start putting it in here. So I just snipped off a little piece of the fabric and put it on where I want it to be, just as I go through everything. And then I'll move the fabric over to this side so I don't lose it, since I have a whole lot of fabric to work with. And then I have the yellow one, the 2 green ones, this is this one here, that one, and then this one is this one here. These 2 are the same. All right, and then I'll pick the rest of these here. So I'll do this one for this. Oh, no, that's this one here. So I'll do that for this one here. And then this one will be these 3. And then now I just have the blues left. So I'm going to pick through some of my blues. Okay, so I think I have my plan mapped out here. I made a few changes in the ground. And then instead of the sun and daylight sky, I'm going to do the moon in a darker sky. So I changed the yellow to this satin white color. And then I have 5 shades of blue. So this is going to be the bottom, and then working my way up towards the top. And then I had 6 lines, but I'm just going to make these 2 1. So I won't press fabric into this line. This will all just be 1. So you can make changes while you're working on it, depending on the colors that you have and how you want the design to look. So I'm going to start down here at the bottom and just work my way up. And then I also want to take into consideration the edges. So I've heard that you can cut straight down, and then when you're pressing in, you'll leave some overlap, and then you'll just fold it over and press it into the sides. And then I think I'll use something around the edge, maybe fabric, or cardboard or something to finish the edges. So I think I might do that now just so I can keep that in mind when I'm cutting my fabric. So this one I'm going to cut right there. This one here, and it is only in this place. And then I just choose the way that I want it to look. And then again, I'm keeping in mind I want like a 1/2 inch overhang, maybe more, maybe an inch on these two. So I will put that there. I can always trim it off, but you can't make it longer. And you can actually mark where you want to cut it, so you're not, messing around trying to hold the paper while you're cutting the fabric. Or you can pin the piece to the fabric and cut around it. You just want to make sure that the mark that you drew, you either cut off or is going to get pushed in so it's not showing on your finished project. Let's see where our mark was way over here. We'll just tuck that for now right there. And then when we add the pieces around it, it'll tuck it in the rest of the way. I also have these strips of adhesive left over, and I should put these along the side so that it gives the fabric something else to stick to. And then I'll just cut through this where these lines are, and that way I can peel off as I go, just like on the top ones. There we go. So we have the bottom part. It's coming together. Okay, so next I'm going to do this one. have the ground done here. Next, I'm going to do the two cactus, and then I'm thinking this moon and then the sky. when you're all done, you can kind of tidy it up a little bit. So overall, it looks good. If you want to, you can kind of look in between the crevices here, and like there's a few threads there. You can carefully try to pull them out, or you can press them in. Pushing them in is probably a better option because you don't know what it's connected to, and it might undo the whole piece. And if that were to happen, you can just cut another piece and push it back in there. But it's not really fun to redo stuff that you've already done. And then to see if there's any pieces that aren't pressed in all the way. And if there's any pieces that are sitting on top, you can take some tape and roll it inside out and then just kind of gently pull it off, or like some tape from a lint roller. You do want to be careful though, because you don't want to pull the fabric out from your lines here. So only as needed. And then you can finish it any way that you want. I took a piece of the fabric that I had and just folded it and wrapped it around, and then folded it on the back and just pinned it in place because you wouldn't see that part. But you can also get like a wooden frame, build a frame, cardboard, anything that you want to do to finish it. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe so you can follow along while we have fun and make stuff.